Hi, I'm Toni Will, and I'm the only female professional hockey general manager in the room.
Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins. This is the only one in the room, but I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hey, Hun.
Hey, can you pull that mic a little tighter to you, hon?
I can.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, thank you for producing always, Hun.
Yeah, I do my best.
Appreciate
honey.
that.
Uh-huh.
Where were we? We were somewhere and you were like producing as you were listening to something.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember that.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't anything
I was just
that
telling him what I liked is all I
Yeah.
was doing.
you were like listening with your producer ear.
Yes, you call it producing. I call it just my opinion.
Yeah. So we're here today and I have my hat. I got to put on.
Oh yeah, you did. You were wearing that earlier.
I was.
Uh-huh. It's very cool.
So this is great, right? It barely fits over my hair, so I would be really set in Michigan.
Yes.
Because I'd be super warm. We're talking to Toni Will. Hi, Toni.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's so cool to meet you both in person after reading about you both in your book.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
That's so cool. I first want to just mention that I am wearing the hat that you sent me all the way from Michigan. I'm in Los Angeles. Scott and I are in Los Angeles. And it says hockey for her. Mm-hmm. It is such a cool hat. And when it does get cold here, now obviously it's summer now, so I won't be wearing this here, but I will send you pictures of me like on our Saturday morning hikes in my hockey for her hat.
Just so you know, Laura wears a hat when it's under 65 degrees and a down jacket. So
this Perfect. Is true. It's true. So I kind of cut you off before, Toni. We were talking about Terry Patterson and the Sober Edge podcast and like all of her work that she does, which is amazing. I was a guest on her podcast and then the book club. Mm-hmm. And I think you were saying that you were able to join for a minute. Was that right?
I did. I was still at the tail end of hockey season. And so I have to Tetris my schedule. And so I popped on because I was like, I didn't know how the book club meeting was going to go. And my hope was if it was open forum that I could, talk to you specifically and tell you why I read your book. So I'm a person that I read my age every year. And it's a goal I set for myself. So I turned 46 a couple weeks ago. And so I'm reading 46 books this year. So last year when I read your book, I was 45 and it was one of my 45 books. It was about a year ago. And I listened about half the books and then I read the actual other half. But I listened to your Audible version. And so it was really cool when I joined book club, you talked about like what it's like to actually record a book and all the work that goes into it. And I was like, wow, it was just so cool because what I respect, I'm so passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion. And I loved that you were a Black author in such a white female space. And I'm like, finally, someone is talking about this and not just alcohol, but pills as well. And so I just had just so much respect for it. And I've been recommending your book to a bunch of my clients as well. So.
Yay. Can I just go back to you read your age every year?
Yeah.
That is so cool. What a great goal, right?
Yeah.
Because I see a new goal coming for you, right?
Yes. Well, I think I must read my age every year just because of our guest books.
Yeah, but you like counting.
I do like counting.
Yeah.
I love counting.
I like credit.
Me too. Well, this year I added listen to my age and podcasts as well. So 46 podcasts. And I thought that would be easier than I'm on pace, but it's not as easy as I thought it would be. So
yeah. And are you going by recommendations or are you just kind of scrolling through and see what?
Usually recommendations because I'm in like I'm always involved in something in, like masterminds or professional development or personal development. So I get these nuggets from different coaches or people in my life that are passionate about different things,
Yes.
and so it's usually recommendations. I launched my own podcast this year. This wasn't something I was intending to do. It's not on my goal worksheet, but I was so passionate about women and so, and fill in the blank, I'm a woman in sports, but so I decided, I'm going to launch my own podcast. So I did that. So I don't count my own podcast though, because that's cheating.
Well, but you do have to listen to that, right? You do your
I
quality
do.
check, all that stuff. But yeah, no, you can't count your own. You
No,
can't count your
no,
own.
no.
Let me introduce you really quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so people know who we're talking to. So this is Toni Will, and so it says the 49th season of Kalamazoo Wings hockey marks the 8th season for K Wings governor and general manager Toni Will,
Mm-hmm.
which is, just like that is really cool. So it says that Toni is a highly respected leader in professional hockey. During her tenure, her glass ceiling shattering tenure, you have established yourself as, I'm trying to change it to you and not to her. You have established yourself as a highly respected leader in professional hockey. You were Kalamazoo's first female general manager, the first woman to ever be named to the ECHL Board of Governors, and currently sits on multiple ECHL professional development career disruption coach as well. And then also you were a podcaster. So I have that you are one of 5 women in your position. Is that correct?
Yeah, in the U.S. Yeah, that's and
Amazing.
that we've done some fact checking on that, and globally, it's pretty darn close. There might be one or two more if you go around the world, but there's not many of us.
So you're in Kalamazoo, Michigan,
Mhm.
which is, it's kind of one of those cities that people talk about like as a punchline, right? Not for the city itself, but for the name.
Mhm.
Like all the way to Kalamazoo, or like from Kalamazoo to whatever. It's just like one of those cities. It doesn't sound real.
Yeah,
Like, and does it have an airport?
it does.
It does
Yeah,
have
and
an
it's an
airport.
international airport.
What? Kalamazoo
That's what
is an international airport?
I don't. That's what the sign says.
When I was 14, living in Berkeley, California, my best friend's mother died and she didn't have another parent. And she went to live with her grandparents in Sturgis, Michigan.
Mhm.
She now lives in Kalamazoo, but she went to Sturgis first. And it caused me to go look for these things on a map because I was so distraught that she had moved so far away. And we corresponded, we wrote letters to each other for years. And I,
Oh,
see that Sturgis postmark, and like, I think it was a Kalamazoo postmark actually.
hmm,
But anyway, this was
yeah.
like, so everything I know about where you live, I know from her in those letters. But you tell me a little bit about where you live and why you live there.
Yeah, so I was born. I love Kalamazoo. I was born and raised here, so I was born in Bronson Hospital, and I thought I would. I grew up in Vicksburg, which is a small town south of Kalamazoo. Went to Western Michigan University and graduated with my business degree, and thought, okay, I'm gonna, fly the coop. And my career started while I was in college. I actually started my career in banking for the first 13 years on the retail side and management. And I started a family. I got married, started a family. So all of a sudden, I had really deep roots in my early 20s, and I never left. And so a lot of what led me to pro hockey, which was not banking, and nor did I ever think I would end up to be a general manager of a men's professional hockey team, was my love of the community. To me, it's just the right size community. We're smack dab in between Detroit and Chicago off I-94, and it's I love the Four Seasons of Michigan,
Mm.
and I love the lakes. I live on a lake actually. It's just I grew up on a lake. I love water, and so it's just a great community. And we're very philanthropic in what we do in Kalamazoo. Like the Kalamazoo Promise, we're known for, where if a student goes to Kalamazoo Public Schools, they get their college fully paid for, no
What?
matter where they go. Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
that's that's unheard of.
Yeah. Do a quick Google search on it. It's pretty amazing. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
How
So
is it that you're able to do that? Do you know?
yeah, well, it's not public knowledge, but I work very closely to those individuals who are very philanthropic. Yeah, just one step away from what I do, and
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So it's privately funded, confidentially, but everyone that's lived here as long as I has know who those people are. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That is a really beautiful thing. I mean, Scott just put his two daughters through college. Well, one of them is still in college,
Hmm.
and the other one has graduated. And I I didn't have the same situation with my kids. One of them went to culinary school right out of high school, and the other one, his dad paid for it, so it wasn't a big deal. But Scott had a lot of discussions with his girls about like how we're going to pay for college and what it's going to look like. And I just think, what an amazing thing that is for parents to know that once their kids graduate, that's not a discussion they're going to have.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, it's such a big deal, and it's just one of the many reasons I love Kalamazoo
Yeah.
and why I raised my three kids here. And yeah, so it's a beautiful place to call home.
I want to, so I'm going to need your help a little bit with this because I want to talk about so many things. I want to talk about your DEI work because that was one of the first things I read about when I started doing research on you. And, for people who aren't watching this, you're a white woman
Mhm.
who lives in, this mythical place in Michigan where college is free and there's an
Yep.
international airport and community is like the basis for people's relationships. And I would imagine that your kind of thirst for diversity, especially in hockey, where I mean, I don't know that much about hockey. As far as like none of the black people I knew grew up watching hockey or playing hockey. Although I have a stepbrother who's my kid's age who played roller hockey very
Hmm.
well, but
Hmm.
not ice hockey. But for the most part, it's basketball, it's football, maybe baseball, right? Like, so you're at the forefront of this, right? Because you're in this really unique position, one of five in the country, maybe one of seven in the world. And I think you could be really content with it as it is,
Hmm.
because there's probably a nice feeder, into this to like kids grow up playing hockey, right? They grow up playing, they're groomed for this, and then so you have a lot of people waiting to be part of what you're in charge of.
Hmm.
So why is there this quest for equity and diversity?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And you know what? I don't get asked it often enough. So I thank you for asking me that because I wish I was asked it more.
Hmm.
Um, when I took the job nearly 10 years ago, it'll be 10 years at the end of this year that I accepted this job, not knowing anything about hockey, by the way. I went to a couple of these games growing up, but I didn't know much. But I loved Kalamazoo. I knew how to sell and I knew how to build a business operations staff because that was my background. But I didn't know anything about hockey. And so the franchise at the time was 41 years old and it was not doing well. Um, on the ice it was doing okay, but off the ice it was really struggling. So they brought me in to do, to turn it around. What I like to say is pull the Titanic out of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do this job. So I really spent the first 2 years figuring it out. And I actually built my 6 leadership pillars around that because years later I got asked, like, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just did it. But then I sat down and got intentional about it and thought, well, how did I do this? And so I built out my 6 leadership pillars and I speak about that quite often. But when it was about 2 or 3 years in, I was sitting in the Board of Governors meeting, and what a Board of Governors does in professional sports is it governs the entire health, wellness, business, hockey operations, vitality of a professional sports league. So there's 29 teams in our league, which is ECHL, and we are affiliated at the national hockey level and the American hockey level. So we are affiliated with the Abbotsford Canucks and the Vancouver Canucks. So our players move up and down, so do our front office staff. I'm sitting in a board meeting one day and I look around and there's 60 people in this room, and there's like two women. And once I could take the blinders off, because I didn't walk into Wings Event Center 10 years ago with my bra on fire and said, "Woman, hear me roar." That was not it at all. I'm like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I was like, I need to say something. Like, I need to say something. So the commissioner's a friend of mine. I called him one day. I'm like, why are we not talking about this? Why is this like not a thing? And he's like, well, and I'm like, no. And so my quest began,
Mm-hmm.
and I have not stopped talking about it for the last 8 years.
It's wonderful.
And I will say, I'm sure this, as we talk more, I've built a lot of programs within the league and won awards and things like that, but it is not always welcomed. My outspoken, saying, no, I'm a woman in this room. Please do not say, gentlemen, let's start the meeting. You got a lady in here too. Because there's these microaggressions that happen, and it's frustrating because I want to be seen and I want to be heard. And whether the other women in the room want to or not, that's up to them. And that's okay, whatever they want. But I'm doing this for my kids because I don't want them to run into the same challenges that I currently run into at times.
I love that answer. Thank you so much. And talk about the only one in the room, right? Because this isn't just the only one in the room at a board of governors meeting. This is the only one in the room at a board of governors meeting that governs hockey. So it's a sport. It's a contact sport. Like, this is like rough and tumble stuff. These are, men who get, lose teeth and get things sliced off. And so you're probably, or one probably isn't really checking the temperature for women in a room like that. They're not considering how things might impact the only woman or the only two women when it comes to those rooms. But so this is why we have to speak up when we're in those situations. We have to speak truth to power, which means you can't just, do an aside to your neighbor who can't make any changes. You have to do what you did, right? Which is talk to the person who can actually make some change and say, what can we do? I wanted to ask you just a follow-up question on that, because you said you'd only been to a couple of games. You weren't a hockey person. You had been in sales. Why did they choose you? Why did they want you?
Yeah. So, it's an interesting story. I'll condense it down, but I originally applied for a job. So we're privately owned. It's in a hospitality company. So there's like restaurants, hotel, retail, and then professional sports. And I actually originally applied for a job inside the Radisson, which is the kind of the marquee hotel downtown Kalamazoo. And they had a high-end fashion boutique called Sydney. And I used to shop there, only on sale. And they were looking for a store manager, a decade ago. And I thought this would be great because I used to run the Chamber of Commerce in Kalamazoo. And so that's part of the reason the allure was to me, because I had all those connections with running a chamber and being so connected to the community in that sense. And so, and I wanted less responsibility. I didn't want to be the face of anything because I was the face of the chamber. I wanted less. My kids were younger, a decade younger, and they were little at the time. And I just wanted less. And they called me, HR called me and said, "Toni, you're way overqualified." I said, "I know." And they said, "But you're going to be bored." And I said, "I know. I want to be bored. I don't want more responsibility." And they said, "Well, we've got something different for you in mind." And I said, "Oh, yeah, what's that?" And they said, "The Kalamazoo Wings." I said, "The hockey team?" I go, "I don't know shit about hockey." That's literally what I said to the HR person. And she laughed and she goes, "That's okay." She goes, "We don't want someone that's passionate about hockey. We want someone that knows how to sell, knows how to build a team and build culture, and loves Kalamazoo." Oh, and by the way, it's a 35% pay cut from what you were making before.
Ooh, so you gotta love it.
Well, and I said, I've always lived by this belief that if I am passionate about what I'm doing, the money will follow. And it was very true. The money followed, and because I love what I do, and I have a lot of autonomy to say, okay, I had a lot of work to do to change this, and we've done it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Wow. Hun, will you remind me before we close to circle back to Toni and ask her how she accomplished these things once she got in? Like, I want to know like some of the steps you took.
The
But
6 leadership pillars, yeah.
yes, thank
Hmm.
you. But I do want to talk about, because this is the other thing that I was like, okay, DEI, what's it like to be in that room, be in your position? But I also want to talk about, because I think of Kalamazoo again, and I think of my friend who lived there, but I also think of very cold weather, lots of, what do they call it? Antifreeze drinks, right? Like I picture a big drinking culture when I
Hmm.
think of Kalamazoo. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I think of. And I don't think of sobriety or alcohol-free living. So I'm wondering if you could talk about, because I know that you've been there your whole life
Hmm.
in this area, and that you just made a decision to go alcohol-free. Uh, how many years ago?
Almost 4.
Almost 4 years ago.
Mhm.
I also know, so this is some of my research that I did. I know that you had a very work hard, play hard
Mhm.
mentality for a while, which nothing is wrong with that, right? A lot of people
Mhm.
do that. And if it's okay for them, then it's okay. Uh, and I also know that there was a point where you moved from bottles to boxes to blackouts.
Mhm.
So can you just tell us a little bit about the where the drinking started for you, and then what that journey was like into living alcohol free?
Yeah. So it took me a long time to be able to figure that line of demarcation out. It was important to me to figure out, but when I was 29, I had a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I was just in an unhappy marriage, and it was nothing like, I don't know, noteworthy. It was just, I was unhappy. We both were from Catholic families, and my brother in law married us. He was a Catholic priest. He baptized our kids. Like, it was just super Catholic. And it was like, I'm going to spend forever in this. This is not who I am. Like, I'm not a conservative person. And, but yet I was living this very conservative life. It just didn't feel right around, square peg in a round hole. And so I ended the marriage, and I was 29 years old, and I could tell now in hindsight that I started to cope with that guilt of being divorced with this Catholic upbringing, that I was the only one. It felt that way at
Mm.
the time. Like, a lot of people get divorced, but it felt like I was the only one. And with these 2 little kids, and then in my 30s is really where that work hard, play hard came in, because my career was on the up and up. It was before I was in hockey. I didn't get into hockey till I was 36. But I've always been immensely driven. And so it was my career in banking or with the chamber. I was achieving goals in triathlon world, where I was or running marathons, doing Ironmans, like, so it was like I earned it, right? Like, I earned the bottles of wine that moved, and boxes were so much better because I didn't have to go to the store as much, and I didn't have to be accountable to how much I was drinking. It
Right.
was fabulous. And, in my
And they don't
mind, and then,
rattle.
yeah,
They don't
yeah,
rattle in the
they
garbage
don't
can.
rattle. Yeah, yeah, you can break the box down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and then the blackouts, I remember they were scary, but they didn't scare me enough to make me stop. But it was really that tipping point, and I remember it vividly the day I Googled, "Am I an alcoholic?" And yet, you would think, in hindsight, it's always funny. I probably drank for, I don't know, however many more years after that moment. But there was those negotiations, the stop and start. I stopped drinking for 15 months back in 2016. I went to AA and went down that path, and I found success with it. I love the community aspect. The some of the methodology, I was, some of the framework is just older, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I decided after 15 months that I was, like, I'm okay. I didn't drink for 15 months, and then I went back out for 3 more years, um, on one day in October 2020, I was like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm. Yeah.
And then I went a different route, and I just decided, and that's how Terry and I met, was through this Naked Mind, and I've been alcohol free since. Now I'm oversimplifying. It's been a ton of work, mindset change, and and really rewiring my brain and what alcohol means, because I made it mean something really important in my life. Like, it was fun. Like, the number one reason I drank was to have fun. Tony party time is what my friends called me.
I love that. So that thank you for sharing all that. I knew a lot of that, but it's different to hear you say it out loud too. Tell me how, or if it was different, um, as someone who didn't partake in your position with the people that you're surrounded with in the town that you are, as to someone who did. Do you feel like, was it received well? Was it awkward? Did you have a hard time saying, no, I'll just take club soda
Mhm.
or whatever you drank? Like, tell me about that transition.
It felt, everyone was very well. Here's what I'll say: it was 2020, so we all know what happened in 2020, right? The pandemic. So everything was shut down. Michigan was on lockdown. We didn't play that season. We were dark, which was very unusual. So it gave me the opportunity to start changing my identity in the safety of my own home and build up that confidence that I use the time at home, even though I was working remotely, but to work on me. And so I decided, I think I was 80 days alcohol free. And I was like, instead of trying, because I love a good loophole. If I don't close loopholes, I'm going to crawl through them. So I said, I'm posting this on social media. And I didn't want to because it was scary. And then people would judge me. And then I'm like, who gives a shit? And so at day 80, I posted it up. And that really was a moment where I slammed the door shut. Like, okay, you can walk backwards on this if you want, Toni, but it's going to be hard. And so I just kept closing loopholes. And that was one way of just the blanket, I'm not drinking. And then every so often I'd post up a milestone, 100 days, 500 days, and
Mm,
just to remind people I'm still not drinking. So it wasn't that challenging. People were
right,
very supportive. And if they were, it was behind my back, and I don't give a shit.
right. Yeah, I mean, I find that generally people are not only supportive when someone stops drinking, but they're intrigued and curious in like a nice way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and I have people in my life. I have a lot of friends from when I was in my 20s that I still we're in the same place, and they're still my friends, and almost none of them have had to look at alcohol in the way that I have.
Hmm.
They're still able to drink, and it's fine, and it's not a big deal. But they're always like so considerate of like, oh, this place has mocktails that we're going to dinner, because a few of us do like regular dinners, and I heard they have really good ones. Like, they really want to make sure that I feel included, which is, what I heard you talking about when you were talking about, you can't just say gentlemen to the room where there are women present. You must include the women, and which is a little bit different than diversity, right? Is diversity is how many people are there, and inclusion is how do you make them feel
Hmm.
like it's an equal playing field, a level playing field. And so that I found that, because I do that work too at a private school here in Los Angeles. But being alcohol free is really similar to that. It's just like, I still want to be included. I still want to partake. I still want to, do well, not all the social things, honestly.
Right.
Like, I'm not trying to go clubbing. I'm not trying to go to Vegas for a weekend. I just know what that weekend's going to look like. And it's boring when you're not drunk. If everybody's drunk, I'm out. If everybody's
Same.
having, people are having a glass of wine, totally fine. I don't
Mhm.
care. But I do find that for anybody who's listening, who's like maybe on the fence about how they might be received, Toni and Scott and I can all attest that. Well, and Scott may have other things to say about this too, because I think some of the people in his life were relieved, that that he wasn't drinking
Oh yeah,
anymore.
there still are relief
They're
16 years
still
later.
relieved. Um, I did want to I'm going to come back to this, but I just had it in my head when I said what I just said about being the only woman in those board meetings. What about people of color?
Yeah.
in hockey in general, and because you talked about women, but I'm wondering, um, one, are there, and if they're
Mhm.
not, like who's speaking up for them?
I love that you asked it, and I don't know how much you did this research, but our head coach is black,
Oh,
and
I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
shocking
and
and
this
wonderful.
yeah, so this is huge because the two teams in the league, in our league, the Cincinnati Cyclones, and of course us, the Kalamazoo Wings, we both are female GMs, and both head coaches are black, which is, yeah. So Kristen Ropp is the GM there. I'll give her a shout out. Her and I definitely lead the charge in terms of we do different versions of diversity, equity, inclusion, like what's important in Cincinnati versus Kalamazoo. But Joel Martin is our head coach, and we work together on that piece. And we actually we have a Black Excellence celebration game each year that we launched because I have a front office employee, TJ Scott. He happened to be the ECHL Employee of the Year last year. He's black, and I was able to hand him that award, and I was just sobbing that day. I mean, we were both bawling because it meant so much. He's the only black guy in that room, and to have him stand there and win this award was huge because for so many, I still get chills thinking about that day. And that's the type of place we are in Kalamazoo, right? Like we want to celebrate that diversity because there are kids that are black, brown, whatever color, looking up to people like us.
Wow. That you made me well up just now when you were talking about that. That is such a beautiful thing to know that it happened, and that it's happening. Um, how have they been received
Oh,
as black men in this predominantly white sport?
I can say from what I've seen, they've been received very well because they're very good at what they do. Before Joel was our head coach, he was our goalie. He played for other teams. He actually played in the NHL as well because he was so good at his sport. It'd be interesting to, and I know I've talked to him about it a little bit, but what it's like to be a black guy, with a bunch of white people, because it is so white. Hockey is so white,
Yeah.
and so, but they're very well respected, and we see when we openly talk about these things, like TJ knows he's black just like Joel knows he's black. We don't ignore that, right? We talk about it, and so they've been received very well, and we see more people of color that feel safe and feel welcome, included, coming to our games.
Wow. That is really wonderful to hear, Tony. I'm so glad that I circled back to that and asked you that. I don't know if you would have gotten to it either way, but it's, for me, just, looking at the outside, if I were to tune into a game or see a clip of a game, I would cheer if I saw a black coach in hockey. I cheer when I see them in basketball. There are a billion black basketball players, but very few black basketball coaches. And so in these key leadership positions in sports, it really matters. When people are the people of authority, it really matters who that is, and I used to tell when I was, when my kids were little and I was doing this diversity work at their school, which is no longer their school because they're grown, I would say, my children need to see a black man in a tie.
Mhm.
They see the coach, they see the groundskeeper, and they're wonderful. But they need to see black men in ties. They need to see them on campus. They need to know that it's possible. And I think it's really important for white students to see that and to know how to address and have respect for, or to create that respect without, because if you don't see it growing up and it's not modeled for you, um, it may be challenging to be an adult in that position for the first time where a black person is in charge. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what, it's like to see Joel behind the bench is
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
That if I'm a little black boy and I'm sitting there, I could be him, right? Like
Yes.
there's hope. And as
Yeah.
long as there's hope, and I didn't have like female role models that were doing what I do, even when I wasn't. And so that's what I've been creating in hockey. And so to say, okay, we're going to do a women in sports for the ECHL, I created this whole program. I launched a mentor mentee, a book club, a networking event. I got sponsors. I launched all of that because I'm like, I see you ladies and I want you to be able to get to where you want to be. And not just white women, because we have all different, you know, colors in the room. And so I see you. I want you to
Yeah.
know I'm here for you. I'm going to lift you up.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It's so good. Thank you for sharing that too. Um, can we go back to your drinking for a minute?
Yeah.
Because I interrupted that because I wanted to talk about that so badly. Um, so Hun, I wanted to ask her about the six pillars, right? I also wanted to ask you something else. Oh, okay, so let's go back to drinking. I want to ask you, and I'll ask you this before we close. Do you love hockey now? So you can answer that in a
Yeah. Do I
minute.
love hockey? Yeah.
You do?
I love the Kalamazoo Wings.
Yeah, okay, okay. We'll talk more about that.
Mhm.
um, because I wanted to circle back to this because I just wanted to give people a well-rounded picture of what it was like for you, and it wasn't it wasn't everybody's journey, just from what I know. I know that you did have a situation at a hotel bar
Mhm.
where you were taken into custody. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you
Yep.
tell us? Is that okay to talk about?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that's what stemmed my 15-month stint in AA because yeah, I was drinking with my then second husband. I'm third time's a charm husband for me. So I'm but my middle marriage, and we were up north vacationing, and I was drinking my favorite Chardonnay, and I thought that you know, like, oh, I'm good, and they wanted to go to bed, but no, 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 alcohol for me was like rocket fuel. And I ended up going down to the bar, and a lot of it became a brownout at that point. But I think I became belligerent, and then I ended up getting arrested. They didn't believe that I was actually staying at the hotel, which
Mm.
I was. And I made a deal with myself that if I ever felt like drinking again after that, that I would watch the footage from the body cams. And a year of being sober, I watched it, and it did the opposite effect. I was shocked at how articulate I was and how the police were kind of messing with me, which was ironic because I was married to a police officer at the time, but he wasn't part of all of that. So, and not that, you know, I poured that alcohol down my throat. This is all on me. But it definitely was a moment where I'm like, okay, my relationship with alcohol is not normal and is makes me uncomfortable, and I'm ashamed of that. And it took me a long time to be able to talk about that arrest and not feel like there was something wrong with me, because the issue isn't me, it's the substance is addictive. So now I freely talk about it because I don't want others to feel ashamed. We're not perfect, and I'm way better now, almost a decade later, than I was back then. So
Yeah. And I think it's also really important. Thank you for telling that part of your story. I think it's important. Like I got sober through a 12-step program. This is how I've stayed sober for almost 16 years. You got sober through another sober support program or another alcohol-free support program called This Naked Mind, right?
mhm. Correct.
And are you also a coach like Terry or no?
Yeah, yes, I am a senior certified coach like Terry.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And you know, my friend Holly Whitaker started another sober support group. So there are many, many different ways to examine your relationship with alcohol, decide if it's right for you, and then there are ways to live without it with the support of these different groups. And it used to just be, you know, this 12-step program is the program, and now there are just so many different ways, and I'm just so glad to have you as an example of someone who tried the 12-step program that I'm in and decided actually this way is better for me, and then this way is working for you.
Yeah.
uh,
Yep.
it's so
There's so
people
many
can't have
tools.
excuses, you know, they're like, oh, that didn't work, so nothing will work. Try
Yeah.
something else, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it was just the stigma. It was, now that I have enough time under my belt, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I would go into any room. And like, I met some amazing people who I'm still friends with to this day in those rooms. And because they are so genuine and authentic, but there are so many resources. And so, like, we talked about the alcohol free, just the mocktails and menus. I just got back I went on a 2-week vacation to Europe, and I just got back on Thursday, and they were, everyone's like, "How are you going to do this alcohol free?" And then there were alcohol free options all over the place. It was
Yeah.
so empowering, and it's what you make it. Like I couldn't imagine. It wasn't even in my purview.
No.
It's so freeing.
Well, and that's now. Like 10 years ago, there weren't all those
No,
options, you know? Even
no,
5 years ago, there weren't all
no,
those options. You
just
had,
O'Doul's.
cranberry and club soda and a lime, was like
Yeah.
the mocktail. And now you can basically have anything,
Yes.
including a glass of, what did you want when you went to the bar? The Chardonnay?
Oh,
Um,
the Kendall Jackson.
yeah. But
That was my jam.
so, I mean, but you could basically have anything and not have the hangover
Yep.
afterward because you can still, enjoy the taste and enjoy it's not for me, actually. I'll just say that up front. The alcohol free drinks are not for me. They're not something that is good for me, but a lot of people I know love them. And
Yeah.
so like there's another option too.
Yeah. There's so
Yeah.
many.
Um, Thank you for all that. I'm going to switch now I'm just going to set the stage here. You've been recruited for this position. You're not a hockey fan. You have this strong sales background. You've been in banking, so you like understand business.
Hmm.
And I don't know how long it takes you to get up to speed, but eventually you kind of create these pillars, these steps to bring this team from the red to the black. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or is that, yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
tell me how that works.
So yeah, so it was number one when I walked in, and I will say as I walk through this quickly, I apply these six leadership pillars to anything in life now. I started by turning a hockey franchise around, but when I stepped back, I'm like, oh, this is how I became alcohol free, or this is how I did an Ironman, or this is how I, fill in the blank, right? So number one, go to the experts. So in hockey, it was like, okay, I don't know how to run this franchise. So I started in my division, and I went and visited the other teams in our division. And I met with the Tonys of that franchise and said, teach me. Now each community is different. So I could just take those pieces and parts that I learned, and I go to leadership pillar number 2, which is innovate. And I made it work for Kalamazoo. And from there, leadership pillar number 3 is actually one of my favorites, is make mistakes, because we're not going to get everything right the first time. And that is where, I don't know about you, but that's where I learn the most, is when I make mistakes. If you were to ask me the last time I made a mistake, it'd probably take me 2 seconds to figure that out. But what was the last thing I was successful at? It would take me a while longer. So I love making mistakes, and I think it's a huge growth opportunity. Um, Number four is very personality driven, but for me, it's ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And so, what that says for me as a leader is that I'm not a people pleaser. I'm very rebellious, and so if I can feed that inner rebel and be outspoken and support in a respectful way, that allows me to create change while driving revenue and getting a message across, all in the same way. So yeah, ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Number 5, this is my leadership style and a culture I build with my staff, but the one word I could boil it down to is macro manage. And by that, I mean nobody likes to be micromanaged, including yours truly. And so I hire people that I trust until shown otherwise. And I hold things really loosely. If I hold on too tightly, it's like you suffocate it, right? And so I'm very much a macro manager. And last but certainly not least, and it ties into culture as well, but to have fun.
Mm.
Like, this stuff can be really serious, but for the love of it, we're in pro sports. I mean, this is fun. People come here using their discretionary dollars on their downtime. Let's have fun. And so that's number 6. And again, it can be applied to really anything in someone's life. And I dive into those much deeper on my websites and in talks that I give, but that's the high level of what those are and how I did it.
I love those. And I love that you teach those. And I'm so glad that you kind of elaborated on ask for forgiveness and not permission, because that was the only one that I kind of stopped on. And I was like, because that can mean different things to different people. But I get it, what you're saying, because what you're doing is so innovative, right? Being a woman in this, looking out for different types of diversity, looking to bring, a business that might not have been as much fun, might not have been making as much money, might not have been successful in the way that it could be, and bringing that into a family, oriented, community oriented place of attraction, right? Where people want to come, maybe people that have never come to a hockey game before, because there's a female, because you're at the helm,
Yep.
Are going to take their daughters to this hockey game so that they can see that this is what's possible. So I like that a lot now. And what I think you said I have 5 minutes, right, hon?
Yep.
So tell me, did these come to you one by one? I know you said in retrospect you could see that they applied to all these different areas of your life, but like, did you think of one and then write it down and think, okay, this is how I'm going to live my life? And then there was another one like, no, this is got to add this because this is how I'm going to live my life. How did that work?
How I recall it happening was my alma mater, Western Michigan University, called me one day and they said, Toni, will you come speak to one of our classes about how you did what you did in Kalamazoo? And I laughed because the definition of success has continued to morph because we keep outdoing ourselves, which is fantastic. But I was sitting at my desk one day and I'm like, well, how did I do this? And I had a Post-it note and I wrote down, I just started to write. I sat there and I thought about it and I'm like, okay, well, I went to the experts and then I started to write it out. And I think it took me all of 3 minutes. And those were my 6. And I carried it in my wallet for years. And so I would present on it periodically. I'd pull it out of my wallet. Eventually, I moved it from my wallet to my notes on my phone app.
Right.
And then eventually, I committed it to memory and began to expound on it as I noted that as I started to evolve and change myself over the last 4 years, I was like, oh, there's something more to this that I could be teaching in other spaces when I launched my coaching businesses and things like that.
I just got to tell you, I think you're fantastic.
No,
I really do. I love what you're doing. I'm, looking forward to seeing you on all I watch all the talk shows, like all the morning talk shows, all the evening talk shows. They should be coming for you because your message is so unique and so uplifting. It's really one of hope, but also one of like, nobody take a seat yet. We're not done.
Oh,
Do
I have
not
so
sit
much
down.
more to go.
We have so much more to go, but in this really kind of like with this positive undertow to it. It's like the messaging of fun really resounds in what you're doing, and it's in the smile on your face, and it's your energy. But yeah, I think you're fantastic. I'm so glad that we got to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tell me how, first of all, what's next for you, and then how people can find you.
Yeah. So what's next for me? Well, there's a lot that's next. I mean, professionally and on the hockey side of things, I'm actually headed to Las Vegas next week. And I'll be actually in California and then Las Vegas, but for league meetings and league awards. I've been nominated for the 7th year in a row for Executive of the Year. And my team, the Kalamazoo Wings, has been nominated for 8 league awards, which we're really proud of. That's record breaking. Especially around one of the games I want to mention really quick, and I'm really proud of, is Rainbow Ice. And we dye our ice rainbow. It was my baby, my brainchild, and that is specific for Hockey is for Everyone, and that is including LGBTQ plus, but all things around diversity, equity, inclusion, socioeconomic, disability, religion, gender, race. And so each year we host that game, and we tend to win a lot of awards around that, and I'm really proud of that.
As you should be. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's next. Our 50th anniversary celebrations coming up in Kalamazoo. So all things next year, 50th anniversary related, which is a big deal in pro sports to be around that long. And then on my own, my passion projects, I mentioned earlier, I've got the podcast I launched called Women In, and I interview men and women. It's all about women who are doing remarkable things, because men came from women too. So how we lift women up and what are their women in.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I have two coaching businesses. I have Mindfulness Elevated, which is all around health and wellness, alcohol, drug reduction or removal, coupled with fitness and nutrition. And then Toni Will Coaching is all around career disruption and getting out of the midlife rut or job change or launching your own business. So I stay busy.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations on the awards.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. And I just realized that, you do this really motivational coaching and your last name is Will, like I will. So it's not like I want to, or maybe, someday. It's
Yep.
Toni Will. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And then where can people find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm at so the Toni Lentini Will. My maiden name is Lentini. ToniWillCoaching.com, mindfulnesselevated.com. I'm on Instagram at I'm Toni Will. I'm on Facebook. I know some people are still on there. Toni Lentini Will there. It's not hard to find me. So it's
Yes.
Toni with an I, no S at the end. Toni Will. I have two boys' names, and
Oh
so
yeah, you do.
yeah. I do. Yeah.
I didn't
So
even
it's
think
easy
about
to
that.
find me.
Yeah.
And I'm very responsive and I love to connect with people and lift people up.
Yes. And your nails are the same color as who was it? It was Brooke Shields
Oh,
gown at the Tonys, your name last night, and she had matching Crocs that she wore with her gown.
I
So
love Crocs.
yes, I hope you are watching this video, listeners, and you can see the color of Tony's nails. They are,
Once a year.
yeah, they are yellow.
I
Or
love it.
yes, they're wonderful. I was watching them the whole time that you were talking.
And I'm a
Um,
hand talker because I'm Italian. So it's like,
yes, I don't know what Scott's excuse is. He's definitely a hand talker too. But thank you, thank you, Tony. Thank you for
thank you
the
for having
interview.
me.
Thank you for the hat, and
Yeah.
all the rest of the gear that you sent, the glasses and the pens, and you're just, yeah, like I said, this was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for writing your book and reaching out and having me on. I truly enjoyed it, reading the book, and I love to pass it on to my clients. I think it's very powerful.
And it's pink like the hat.
I know. It's so cute.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.